Nora had always been different. From the day she discovered an abandoned dragon egg in the woods near her home, she knew her life would never be ordinary. When the egg hatched, revealing a small, shimmering dragon with scales that gleamed like molten gold, she named him Ember. From that moment, they became inseparable. Ember grew rapidly, his wings unfurling with a span that soon overshadowed Nora's small cottage. But despite his intimidating size and fiery breath, he was gentle, especially with her. He curled around her protectively at night, purring low vibrations that lulled her to sleep. But while Ember was a source of comfort and joy for Nora, he also isolated her. The few children in her village avoided her, spreading rumors of the strange girl who lived with a monster. Nora didn't mind too much. She loved Ember more than she thought she could ever love a human friend. Still, sometimes she felt a pang of loneliness when she saw other children laughing and playing together. Everything changed the day she met Eli. Nora had spent years mastering the art of invisibility, keeping her head down, avoiding eye contact, and fading into the backdrop of the village's bustling life. Her secret demanded it. If anyone found out about Ember, they wouldn't understand. Dragons were myths to most, monsters to some, and treasures to others. Ember was none of those things. To Nora, he was her best friend, her protector, and her home. That's why meeting Eli was both unexpected and terrifying. It was a quiet afternoon when their paths first crossed. Nora had ventured to the forest's edge to gather herbs for tea. Ember, as always, followed at a distance, his enormous body hidden among the trees. He kept his glowing scales dim to avoid detection, but Nora could always feel his presence, a comforting warmth at her back. She was crouched by a creek, inspecting a patch of mint, when she heard the splash of a stone hitting water. She froze, her heart racing. Someone was nearby. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping the forest until it landed on a boy sitting by the creek bank, his back to her. He had sandy brown hair that curled at the edges, and his clothes were well-worn but clean. He skipped another stone across the water, the motion easy and practiced. For a moment, Nora considered retreating. It was safer that way. But as she moved to step back, her foot caught on a root, and she stumbled. The rustle of leaves was enough to catch his attention. He turned, his eyes, a soft, curious green, locking onto hers. "Oh, hi," he said, his voice calm and friendly. Nora's mind raced. She wasn't used to talking to strangers, especially boys. She mumbled something unintelligible and began to back away, but the boy held up a hand. "Wait," he said, his tone gentle. "It's okay. I didn't mean to scare you." Nora hesitated. There was something in his expression, an openness, a lack of judgment, that made her pause. "I'm Eli," he said, standing up and brushing dirt off his hands. "I just moved here. My dad's the new blacksmith." Nora nodded but said nothing. Eli tilted his head, studying her. "You live near the forest, don't you? I've seen you walking around here before." She stiffened. Had he seen Ember? Eli quickly added, "Sorry, that sounded weird. I just mean it's nice out here. Quiet. I like it." Nora relaxed a fraction. "It is quiet," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli smiled. "What's your name?" For a moment, she considered lying, but something about him made her decide otherwise. "Nora." Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. At first, Nora thought it was coincidence, but she soon realized Eli sought her out deliberately. He'd wait by the creek or the old oak tree near the forest's edge, always ready with a warm smile and an easy conversation. At first, she kept their interactions brief. She couldn't risk him finding out about Ember. But Eli's kindness chipped away at her defenses. He never pushed her to talk more than she was comfortable with, and he never judged her for her quietness or the way she avoided the other villagers. One afternoon, as they sat side by side on a fallen log, Eli turned to her and said, "You know, the other kids at school say you're different." Nora tensed. "But I think they're just boring," he added, grinning. She couldn't help but laugh, a small, hesitant sound that surprised even her. "I'm serious," Eli said. "They're all the same. You're not. And I think that's a good thing." Nora looked at him, searching his face for any hint of mockery. There was none, just sincerity. The day Nora decided to tell Eli her secret was one she would never forget. They were walking through the forest, the late afternoon sun casting dappled shadows on the ground. Ember was nearby, hidden as usual. Nora had been quieter than usual, her mind a whirlwind of anxiety and doubt. Eli noticed. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, stopping to face her. She hesitated. "Eli, if I tell you something, will you promise not to tell anyone else? Ever?" His expression grew serious. "Of course. I'd never betray your trust." Nora took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I have a dragon." The words hung in the air, absurd and impossible. She braced herself for laughter or disbelief, but Eli simply blinked, his brow furrowing slightly. "A dragon," he repeated. She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Like an actual dragon?" "Yes." To her surprise, Eli didn't laugh or call her crazy. Instead, he asked, "Can I see him?" "You believe me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why wouldn't I?" he said, smiling gently. "You don't seem like the kind of person who'd make something like that up." Her heart swelled with relief and gratitude. "Okay," she said, her voice steadier now. "But you have to promise not to tell anyone. If people found out, they'd try to take him away." "I promise," Eli said, his green eyes earnest. Nora led him deeper into the forest, her heart pounding. She whistled softly, a melody that Ember knew well. The ground trembled slightly, and moments later, Ember emerged from the shadows, his golden scales catching the sunlight and casting shimmering reflections all around. He was massive now, his wings folded neatly against his sides, and his eyes glowing with intelligence. Eli's jaw dropped. He's incredible," he whispered, taking a cautious step forward. Ember tilted his head, studying Eli with an intense gaze. Sensing no threat, the dragon lowered his massive head, allowing Eli to place a tentative hand on his warm, smooth scales. "He likes you," Nora said, her voice filled with wonder. Eli turned to her, his face alight with excitement. How could anyone not like him? He's amazing. In that moment, Nora knew she had found someone she could trust, not just with her secret, but with her heart. Nora and Eli's bond deepened as they spent more time together, their lives now tethered by the secret of Ember. Days turned to weeks, and soon they became inseparable, exploring the forest and the hidden wonders it contained. Ember, ever watchful, often lingered nearby, his presence a comforting constant. At first, Nora had been nervous about how Ember would react to Eli. The dragon had always been wary of strangers, his protectiveness of Nora fierce and unyielding. But Eli had a gentleness about him that seemed to put Ember at ease. It wasn't long before the dragon would lower his head to allow Eli to scratch beneath his massive jaw or rest his wings around both of them in a protective embrace during their long talks by the creek. One evening, Eli suggested they venture deeper into the forest than they ever had before. Nora hesitated at first. Her world had always been small, confined to the familiar paths and clearings near the village. But with Eli's encouraging grin and Ember's reassuring presence, she agreed. They walked for hours, the forest growing denser around them, until they stumbled upon a hidden meadow. It was breathtaking, the air thick with shimmering fireflies that danced like tiny stars. The grass glowed faintly, as if infused with moonlight, and the trees formed a natural canopy, their leaves glistening with dew that refracted the light. "This is incredible," Eli whispered, turning in slow circles to take it all in. Nora smiled, feeling a rare sense of peace. It's like something out of a dream. Ember lay down at the edge of the meadow, his massive body blending into the shadows. The three of them stayed there until the sky turned dark, the fireflies' glow growing brighter as the stars appeared overhead. As they sat together, Eli turned to Nora. "You know, I think this is the happiest I've ever been." She glanced at him, surprised by his honesty. "Really?" "Yeah," he said, his voice soft. "Back home, before we moved here, everything was hard. My dad worked all the time, and I didn't have anyone to talk to. But now I have you. And Ember." Nora felt a warmth spread through her chest. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. "I'm glad you're here, too." Over time, Nora began to teach Eli more about dragons, what she had learned from living with Ember all these years. She showed him how to interpret the subtle changes in Ember's posture and expressions, how to understand the low, rumbling sounds he made when he was content or alert. "He's not just an animal," Nora explained one afternoon as they sat by a stream, Ember resting nearby. "He's more than that. Dragons are intelligent. They feel things deeply, like we do. Sometimes, I think he understands me better than I understand myself." Eli nodded, watching as Ember stretched his wings lazily. "I can see that. He's incredible, Nora. I mean, just look at him." Ember let out a low, rumbling purr, as if acknowledging the compliment. Nora laughed. "He likes you. That's rare, you know. He doesn't trust many people." "Well," Eli said with a grin, "I guess I'm just special." The day Ember allowed Eli to ride him was one of the most exhilarating moments of their lives. It had started as an ordinary afternoon. The three of them were in their favorite clearing, with Eli and Nora taking turns tossing sticks for Ember to catch, a game the massive dragon played with surprising gentleness. Then, without warning, Ember crouched low to the ground, his wings spread wide. He looked at Eli, then at Nora, his golden eyes filled with an unspoken invitation. You want us to ride you?" Nora asked, her voice filled with awe. Ember let out a soft huff, his way of saying yes. Eli hesitated, glancing at Nora. "Are you sure it's okay?" Nora smiled, her excitement bubbling over. "If he's inviting us, it's more than okay. Come on." With her guidance, they climbed onto Ember's broad back, settling between the ridges of his spine. Nora had done this many times before, but for Eli, it was a first. "Hold on tight," she said, gripping the edge of one of Ember's scales. Before Eli could respond, Ember leapt into the air, his massive wings beating powerfully. The ground fell away beneath them, and Eli let out a startled shout that quickly turned into a whoop of exhilaration. The wind rushed past them as Ember soared higher and higher, the forest shrinking into a patchwork of green below. The sky stretched endlessly around them, the clouds close enough to touch. "This is amazing," Eli shouted, his face lit with pure joy. Nora laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. "I told you." They flew for hours, the world below transforming into a tapestry of rivers, mountains, and valleys. When Ember finally landed, his stomach rumbling softly from the exertion, Eli slid off his back, his legs shaking. "That," he said, turning to Nora with a wide grin, "was the best thing I've ever done." Nora smiled, her heart full. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her world was expanding, no longer confined by fear, but opened wide by friendship and trust. The idea had come to Nora in fragments, like a dream she couldn't shake. She'd always felt safe with Ember, safer than she'd ever felt in her small, wary life. And sometimes, late at night, when Ember's warm breath filled the cave and the soft glow of his scales bathed the walls, she imagined what it would be like to retreat even further, to live within him, surrounded entirely by the creature who had been her constant protector. She had never shared this thought with anyone. It was too strange, too impossible. But one night, As she and Eli lay on a blanket near the edge of the forest, staring up at the stars, she found herself saying it aloud. "I wish I could live inside Ember," she murmured. Eli turned his head, his green eyes soft and curious. Inside him, Nora nodded, her cheeks flushing. "It sounds crazy, I know. But it's like he's my home, you know? I feel so safe with him. Sometimes I think about being completely surrounded by him, where nothing can hurt me." Eli was quiet for a moment, and Nora braced herself for laughter or judgment. Instead, he reached out and took her hand. "I think I understand," he said. "Ember's not just a dragon. He's something more. If that's what you dream of, it's not crazy. It's beautiful." Her eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed his hand. "Thank you." It happened on a day that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. Ember lay sprawled in a sunny clearing, his scales shimmering like molten gold. Nora and Eli sat beside him, their conversation drifting to the topic of her dream. "Do you think he'd let me?" Nora asked, her voice tentative. Eli looked at Ember, then back at her. "There's only one way to find out." Nora turned to the dragon, her heart pounding. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his warm, smooth scales. "Ember," she said softly, "I need to ask you something." The dragon tilted his massive head, his golden eyes meeting hers. She took a deep breath. Would you let me stay inside you? Just for a little while." For a moment, Ember was still. Then he let out a low, rumbling sound, a mix of curiosity and understanding. He lowered his head, opening his enormous jaws wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth and a glowing, cavernous throat. Eli stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Are you sure?" he asked. Nora nodded, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Yes." To her surprise, Eli said, "Then I'm coming with you." She turned to him, her eyes wide. "Eli, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted, his voice firm. "If this is where you feel safe, then that's where I want to be too." Her chest tightened with emotion. She reached for his hand, and together they stepped forward. Ember's mouth was warm and humid, the walls of his throat glowing faintly with an inner light. As they moved deeper, the light grew brighter, casting everything in hues of gold and amber. The walls were smooth and soft, pulsing gently with the dragon's heartbeat. "It's beautiful," Eli whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Nora nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It's like being inside the sun." The descent was slow and gentle, as if Ember was cradling them with every movement. The sound of his breathing surrounded them, a rhythmic, soothing rush that seemed to echo in their very bones. Finally, they entered a large, open chamber. Ember's stomach. It was nothing like they had expected. The walls glowed with the same golden light, the surface rippling with a strange, otherworldly energy. The air was warm and sweet, filled with a faint, spicy scent that reminded Nora of cinnamon and cedar. "It's alive," Eli said, his voice trembling with awe. Nora smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "We're part of him now." Life inside Ember was unlike anything they had ever imagined. The walls of his stomach were soft and pliable, like a giant cushion that conformed to their movements. They could feel the subtle vibrations of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the gentle rise and fall of his breathing, and the occasional rumble of his hunger. At first, they were nervous, unsure of how to navigate this strange, living space. But Ember seemed to sense their needs, adjusting his movements to keep them comfortable. When they were hungry, he swallowed fruits and small animals, the energy of the food transforming into a warm, glowing mist that filled the chamber and nourished them. "It's like magic," Eli said one day, reaching out to touch the glowing walls. Nora laughed. "Everything about Ember is magic." They spent their days exploring the chamber, discovering small nooks and crannies where the walls shimmered with different colors. At night, they curled up together, the warmth of Ember's body lulling them to sleep. Ember took them on journeys across the world and beyond. As he soared through the skies, the chamber would shift and sway, the walls rippling with the force of his movements. When he landed, the ground's impact sent gentle tremors through the chamber, like a rolling wave beneath their feet. But the most incredible journeys were the ones that took them beyond the stars. Ember's powerful wings carried them into the heavens, past glittering constellations and swirling nebulae. Inside him, they felt the gentle hum of the universe itself, a deep, resonant vibration that filled them with wonder. Eli often gazed at Nora during these moments, his eyes shining with love. "You were right," he said one night as they floated among the stars. "This is the safest, most beautiful place in the world." Nora smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And it's ours." The first time Ember carried them beyond the skies, the world fell away so completely it felt as though they had slipped into a dream. Nora and Eli clung to each other inside the glowing chamber of Ember's stomach, their breaths mingling in the warm, cinnamon-scented air as the dragon surged into the heavens. The sensations inside Ember were unlike anything they had ever experienced. As his wings beat powerfully against the dense atmosphere, the walls of his stomach rippled in rhythmic waves. It was as though they were floating in a vast, living ocean, each pulse a gentle reminder of Ember's strength. The vibrations resonated through their bodies, an intricate symphony of life, a steady thrum of his heartbeat, the rushing cadence of his breath, and the deep, reverberating growl of his power as he ascended. Outside, the dragon's scales began to shimmer more intensely, a response to the thinning air and encroaching stars. That light seeped inward, casting the chamber in a spectrum of shifting colors, golden yellows, vibrant oranges, and flickering blues. The illumination created patterns on the walls, like waves of fire-frozen mid-dance. Nora pressed her hands against the smooth, slightly pliable surface, her fingers tracing the glowing currents. "It's alive in every way," she whispered, awe thick in her voice. "It's like being inside the heart of the universe." Eli nodded, though his words caught in his throat as they broke through the final layers of atmosphere. Suddenly, the sensation shifted. The roar of the wind vanished, replaced by a deep, pervasive silence. Ember's movements smoothed into an almost dreamlike glide, and the chamber stilled, a serene cocoon. Ember opened his vast jaws, and for a moment, even the protective glow of his inner light dimmed, revealing the universe in all its infinite glory. Starlight poured into the dragon's maw, spilling into the chamber like liquid silver. The sight was breathtaking. The stars seemed impossibly close, their light dancing on the walls like countless tiny beacons. Nebulae stretched in every direction, swirling clouds of brilliant pinks, blues, and purples. Great cosmic rivers of dust and light wove through the darkness, their beauty so profound it brought tears to their eyes. "I've never," Eli began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it could be this beautiful." "It's more than beautiful," Nora replied, her voice trembling. "It's everything." As Ember glided through the void, the stars themselves seemed to respond to his presence. Trails of light followed in his wake, tiny sparks drifting through the dragon's open jaws and into his stomach. The light shimmered against the chamber's walls, painting intricate constellations that seemed to shift and change with every beat of Ember's wings. Inside Ember, the boy and girl felt not only the beauty around them, but also the dragon's own awe. Though he could not speak in words, his emotions radiated through the chamber, a warm, golden hum that wrapped around them like a protective embrace. Ember's joy was palpable, a soaring, uncontainable feeling that sent shivers through the chamber. His pride in showing them the universe was like a sunburst, each pulse of his emotions a wave of light and warmth that filled the space around them. Nora closed her eyes, tears streaking her cheeks. "He's happy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He's sharing this with us because he loves us." Eli smiled, reaching out to place a hand on the shimmering wall. "We love you too, Ember," he murmured. "More than anything." Ember's response was immediate. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, the light growing brighter, warmer, as if the dragon himself was embracing them. The adventures themselves were beyond anything they had imagined. Ember took them through shimmering asteroid fields where each rock glowed with strange, ethereal light, as though the stars themselves had gifted them their glow. The chamber would shift slightly with each twist and turn, the walls rippling like silk as Ember maneuvered with perfect grace. In one dazzling moment, they passed through a meteor shower. Ember's body absorbed the glowing particles, and within his stomach, the boy and girl felt the faintest tingling sensation, like warm stardust brushing their skin. The air sparkled with tiny motes of light, drifting lazily around them before dissolving into the golden glow of the chamber. When they neared a massive nebula, a swirling vortex of vivid colors and shimmering energy, Ember hovered for a moment, his awe radiating through the chamber. The light from the nebula seeped into the dragon, and within, the walls glowed with new, brilliant patterns. The colors danced like watercolors spilled across the sky, shifting and swirling in mesmerizing waves. Nora and Eli stood in the center of the chamber, holding each other as the universe unfolded around them. They could feel every beat of Ember's heart, every deep, powerful breath as he marveled at the beauty he was showing them. Occasionally, Ember would pause to feed, drifting toward a star or a cluster of energy-laden particles. When he absorbed these cosmic delicacies, the chamber would come alive with activity. The walls pulsed with renewed vigor, and the air would thicken with a sweet, honeyed aroma. Nora and Eli felt a warm energy seep into them, revitalizing their bodies and minds. It was a strange, exhilarating sensation, as though they were sharing in Ember's nourishment. "What do you think it tastes like to him?" Eli asked one day, leaning against the glowing wall. Nora laughed softly. "I don't know. To me, it feels like sunlight and summer and happiness." "Yeah," Eli agreed, smiling. "Exactly." When Ember finally began his descent back to Earth, the sensations inside him shifted once more. The chamber grew warmer, the ripples in the walls more pronounced as the dragon re-entered the atmosphere. The boy and girl held tightly to each other as Ember's body shook slightly, his movements strong and sure. The roar of the wind returned, muffled but powerful, and the chamber filled with a deep, resonant hum. When they finally landed, the stillness felt strange. Nora and Eli sat together, their hands clasped, their faces glowing with the light of the chamber. "I don't think I'll ever get used to this," Eli said, his voice soft. Nora smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I don't think I want to." Life inside Ember's belly was more than just a fantastical adventure. It was an existence that tested the limits of their endurance, their bond, and their understanding of what it meant to be part of something as grand and ancient as a dragon. The shimmering warmth that had once been comforting soon began to feel like a weight, an unyielding force that surrounded them on all sides. The walls of Ember's stomach, once smooth and luminous, now pulsed and contracted with an intensity that seemed to grow with each passing day. Though they were safe within Ember, they could not escape the effects of living inside such a powerful creature. The sensations that once brought them peace began to become overwhelming. Every movement Ember made caused a ripple through the chamber, a shudder of his body as he shifted position, a slow, undulating roll that seemed to shake the very foundations of their existence. At first, it was an exhilarating ride, a feeling of being cradled by the very essence of life. But as time passed, Nora and Eli began to notice the cracks in their sanctuary. The walls of the chamber, once so comforting, were now too close, too suffocating. The air, rich with the scent of Ember's inner essence, became thick with the heat of his digestion. It was a reminder that they were not in a safe, idyllic paradise. They were in the belly of a living, breathing being, where every moment was shared with the immense processes of life and survival. It started with the tremors. Nora had never known true fear until she felt the stomach walls shake for the first time. It was an unfamiliar sensation, deep, primal, as though the very earth itself had rumbled beneath them. The glow that had once illuminated their world dimmed for a moment, as the shifting of Ember's massive form made the chamber quake. "What's happening?" Eli asked, his voice strained as he braced himself against the wall. "I don't know," Nora replied, panic creeping into her voice. She'd never felt this before, not in all the years of living with Ember. The tremors grew stronger, and she felt the weight of Ember's massive body shifting beneath them, as if he were moving in a way that was unfamiliar to both of them. They clung to each other, the chamber pulsing with each of Ember's breaths, the air thickening. The glowing walls seemed to darken, their colors muted by the strain of Ember's movements. Every time the dragon's body shifted, it felt as though the world around them might collapse. "I think he's hungry," Nora said softly, her voice trembling with realization. "He's searching for food." Eli's eyes widened in understanding. "How long has it been since he ate?" Nora glanced up, trying to recall the last time they had passed through the great cosmos and witnessed Ember's feast. "Too long," she murmured. Ember's hunger was unlike anything they had ever witnessed before. When the dragon's massive body was in search of sustenance, the entire stomach would react. The walls contracted, drawing them inward, and the air became thick with a strange, organic tension that vibrated through every fiber of their being. They could hear the growls of hunger deep within Ember, a deep rumbling that seemed to shake the very marrow of their bones. It was not just an external phenomenon. The chamber itself seemed to become more alive with each passing moment, the walls pulsating with hunger, like a vast, cavernous mouth ready to swallow anything in its path. The air, once warm and soothing, was now stifling and heavy. It pressed in on them from all sides, as though Ember's stomach was slowly becoming a prison. Nora and Eli tried to comfort one another through the waves of fear that began to crash over them. "We'll be fine," Eli whispered, though his words sounded hollow even to him. "He's never hurt us." But even he couldn't deny the growing unease that settled in the pit of his stomach. The closer Ember came to his food, the more the world inside his belly seemed to shrink, to darken. Every movement, every vibration became an echo of the dragon's instinctual drive. They had known the dragon's power in the skies, but they had never experienced it from within, where they were completely at its mercy. As Ember finally captured prey, a massive comet of glowing, celestial energy, Nora and Eli felt the surge of force as the dragon swallowed it whole. The walls around them contracted with an enormous pressure, the air thick with a scent of new energy. The chamber seemed to shrink, and for a terrifying moment, it felt as though they might be crushed. Nora gasped for breath, her chest tightening. She could feel Ember's stomach shifting, the smooth walls rippling with the movement of the digested food. Each pulse of the dragon's body seemed to send a wave of heat and pressure through the chamber. Ember was a living furnace, and the food he consumed only intensified the warmth that had already enveloped them. "The heat, it's too much," Nora whispered, her voice tight. "I know," Eli said, his hand clutching hers. "We need to find a way to keep cool." But there was no escape. The heat wrapped around them, saturating the air until it felt like they were drowning in Ember's warmth. The walls of the stomach pulsed with each movement, making it difficult to move, difficult to breathe. Nora and Eli had to find a way to adapt, to adjust to the unpredictable nature of living inside a creature as powerful and ancient as Ember. They learned to ride the waves of his movements, bracing themselves against the shifts of the walls. They learned to sense when Ember was preparing to feed, when his hunger would intensify, and they would try to prepare themselves mentally for the strain it would put on their bodies. After a particularly intense feeding, when Ember's stomach had grown bloated and the air had become thick with the scent of his meal, Nora and Eli lay together in silence. The walls of the chamber had become too tight, too confining. There was no way to escape the weight of the dragon's presence, no way to hide from the deep rumblings that reverberated through every fiber of their being. "What if we can't take it?" Nora whispered, her voice full of doubt. "What if we can't live like this?" Eli stroked her hair gently, the quiet sound of his fingers running through her strands a grounding force in the midst of the chaos. "We'll find a way," he said softly. "We're stronger than we think." And yet, as he spoke, Eli couldn't shake the creeping feeling that had settled in his own chest, the pressure of being confined inside the dragon's belly, the feeling that they were trapped in a place where the air grew thinner and the warmth more oppressive. It was one thing to be inside Ember for short periods, to soar through the skies, to marvel at the wonders of the universe. But living inside him, day after day, took its toll on them both. The trials of life within Ember's stomach began to forge something deeper than either Nora or Eli had ever imagined. Their bond became unbreakable, their trust in each other solidified by the shared struggles they faced together. In moments of fear, they leaned on one another, taking comfort in the simple act of holding each other. And despite the trials, despite the unbearable heat and the pressure, there were still moments of serenity. There were still moments where they would lie together, listening to the soothing rhythm of Ember's heartbeat, feeling the dragon's warmth surrounding them like a blanket of safety. Even in the depths of their struggles, there was a deep love that flowed between them, a love that had grown stronger with each passing challenge. As the soft, golden walls of Ember's stomach enveloped Nora and Eli, they were struck not just by the warmth of the space, but by the overwhelming sense of safety and serenity it provided. From the moment they entered, the vast interior felt like a sanctuary, a refuge from the harsh world outside. It was as though the dragon's very essence wrapped around them, shielding them from fear, pain, and loneliness. The moment they stepped inside, the air was thick with the gentle pulse of Ember's heartbeat, a rhythmic and constant thrum that reverberated through the walls and into their bones. It was the kind of sound that spoke to their souls, a quiet reassurance that no matter what lay ahead, they were safe here. The walls, soft and yielding like the finest velvet, enveloped them in a cocoon of warmth. Every movement they made caused the walls to shift slightly, as if the dragon's body were responding to their presence, adapting to ensure their comfort. The air inside, infused with a delicate, earthy scent, felt alive, smooth and nurturing, like being held in the arms of the world itself. It was as though the dragon's very being was designed to protect them, to soothe every fear and provide an endless well of comfort. Nora, her hand brushing lightly against the glowing veins running through the stomach's interior, couldn't help but sigh in relief. "It feels like being in the heart of the earth," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Eli, his eyes wide with wonder as he gazed at the shifting walls of amber and gold, nodded. "It's like nothing I've ever felt before. It's safe. I feel like nothing can touch us here." There was no sound in the belly of Ember save for their voices, the occasional hum of the dragon's movements, and the soft trickling of liquid that flowed through channels embedded in the walls. It wasn't a stomach in the traditional sense. There was no oppressive smell, no claustrophobia. Instead, it was a vast, living space, a protective womb in which the two could stretch and explore, free from worry. At times, the belly's gentle pulse would quicken as Ember flew through the skies, but even then, it never felt jarring. Instead, the quickening of his heartbeat inside the walls felt like an exhilarating rush, one that seemed to match their own pulse, synchronizing with their every breath, their every beat. "Is this really happening?" Nora murmured, her voice full of disbelief as she lay back against the soft, warm floor. Her hair fanned out like a halo around her head, and she stared up at the softly glowing ceiling, as if searching for an answer in the amber-hued light. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was real, the magnitude of it took her breath away. She had wanted this comfort for so long, but she didn't know how deep it could go. Eli, who had always been her steadfast companion, reached over to take her hand. His fingers, warm and steady, laced through hers. There was a certain quiet intimacy in the way they connected, the understanding between them stronger than any words. He gently tugged her hand, pulling her closer, and they lay side by side, close enough to feel the heat of each other's skin. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be," Eli said, his voice low, thick with emotion. "I've never felt this kind of peace before. I don't want to leave." Nora nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She had never realized how much she longed for this kind of safety, how deeply she craved the protection Ember's body offered. The world outside had always been a place of discomfort for her, where the sharp edges of people's judgment and fear cut into her heart. But here, in the belly of Ember, there was nothing but warmth, softness, and understanding. It was as if the dragon himself had somehow erased all the hurt from her life, leaving only a sense of belonging. The walls around them seemed to pulse in response to their shared contentment. As they lay together, the air around them seemed to grow even more soothing, the golden glow from the walls intensifying, as though the dragon could sense their need for reassurance. And with each passing moment, Nora and Eli found themselves sinking deeper into the comfort of their new life, allowing the rhythm of Ember's body to lull them into a state of perfect calm. "Do you ever think about what the world outside is like?" Eli asked, his voice drifting in the warm, humming air. Nora closed her eyes, the soft thrum of Ember's heartbeat like a lullaby in her ears. She thought about it for a moment, but the thought of leaving this space, of returning to the outside world with its harshness and uncertainty, felt far away, as though it belonged to another life. She wanted to tell him about the world outside, how it had always seemed so daunting, so full of expectations that she could never meet. But here, inside the belly of Ember, she could be free. She could just be. And that was enough. "I don't know," she said softly, "but right now, I don't think it matters. I'm right where I need to be." Eli's hand tightened around hers, and he turned to face her. There was a quiet strength in his eyes, a tenderness that made her heart flutter. "I'll always be here with you, Nora. No matter where we are, I'll be by your side." Her heart swelled with emotion. She had never known this kind of trust, this kind of love. The world outside had failed to offer her comfort, but here, in the warm, living belly of Ember, she had found her sanctuary. She smiled, a slow, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. And in that moment, she knew this was where they belonged. The world beyond no longer seemed so important. As long as they had each other, and as long as Ember carried them in his embrace, they were safe. They were home. The more Nora and Eli allowed themselves to live inside the dragon, the more they realized that this place was not just a refuge, it was a home of their own creation. They shaped the space as much as it shaped them. The patterns on the walls changed depending on their moods, like the dragon's body was attuned to their hearts. If they were happy, the walls glowed with a soft, golden hue. If they were sad or contemplative, the colors deepened to a gentle, amber tone. The comfort they felt in the belly of the dragon wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. The dragon wasn't just sheltering them, it was offering them a place to heal, to grow, and to be truly themselves. For the first time in their lives, Nora and Eli felt free, not from danger, but from the weight of the world's expectations. Here, inside Ember, they were allowed to exist as they were, unconditionally loved, cherished, and accepted. It was a comfort they had never known before, and in the quiet peace of Ember's belly, they found something more precious than anything they could have imagined: the certainty that no matter what, they would never be alone. As the days inside Ember's belly unfolded, Nora and Eli settled into their new world, making it their own in ways that felt both natural and profound. The belly of the dragon, which had once felt foreign and vast, gradually became a space of deep comfort and intimacy, a home they crafted together. The first thing they decided to do was create a sense of structure. The soft, golden fibers of Ember's stomach were remarkably flexible, yet strong. They used them to weave the very foundation of their new life: cozy hammocks for sleeping, intricate carpets made from the softer strands, and small shelves to hold their precious finds. Every task was a shared endeavor, and each piece of furniture, woven with their hands, carried their shared dreams and hopes. Nora had an eye for beauty, and as they worked, she adorned their space with the treasures they found inside Ember's body. Tiny glowing crystals, some shaped like stars, others like teardrops, hung delicately from threads of fiber, casting gentle, shimmering light across their home. They created a small fireplace from the soft stone-like formations that occasionally formed in Ember's stomach. The heat from the fire wasn't the kind that scorched, but a gentle warmth that made the space feel like a hearth, the heart of their home. The walls around them, made from smooth, amber-hued material, were more than just shelter. They became a canvas for their creativity. With the glowing remnants of Ember's meals, they painted simple designs, swirling patterns, geometric shapes, and representations of the adventures they had shared. The light from the walls shifted with their moods, too. When they laughed, the golden glow would brighten. When they were quiet and thoughtful, the colors softened, deepening into rich amber hues. Eli, ever the craftsman, created small tools from the bone-like structures that Ember's body absorbed. He shaped spoons, bowls, and even a few chairs, simple, functional, but made with a tenderness that reflected the love he had for the space they were creating together. He designed a special chair just for Nora, a wide, cushioned seat with room enough for both of them to sit close. "Your chair," Eli said, grinning, as he placed the final touches on the chair's backrest. "So you can always have a place to relax while we look at the stars." Nora smiled, her heart swelling with affection for him. "It's perfect," she said softly. "Thank you." They spent hours in the evenings, sitting side by side in their new home, enjoying the peace that surrounded them. They would talk about their adventures, or simply gaze out through the translucent walls at the ever-changing landscape beyond. Sometimes, they would listen to Ember's low, rumbling growl as he roamed through the skies, or feel the soft, rocking motions as the dragon took flight. The sense of security within the belly of Ember was unlike anything Nora had ever known. It was the warmth of knowing she was loved, cherished, and safe, surrounded by the gentle hum of the dragon's body. It was the comfort of having a place where she didn't have to hide, a place where she could be herself completely. As they continued to weave their lives together inside Ember, they realized that home wasn't just the physical space they had created. It was the bond they shared, the life they built hand in hand, inside the belly of the dragon. They had carved out a space that felt both sacred and alive, and it was a place of joy, laughter, and unwavering love. Ember's wings unfurled, massive and powerful, casting a shadow over the land below. With a great, rhythmic beat, they ascended into the sky, and Nora and Eli could feel the subtle changes in the stomach as Ember's body shifted, preparing for flight. The air around them inside Ember's belly grew lighter as the dragon began his ascent, the sound of his wings cutting through the air, vibrating deeply through their bodies. The walls around them seemed to hum in harmony with Ember's movement, the glowing veins pulsing like heartbeats as if they were all connected by the same rhythm. It was both thrilling and calming at once. "Are you ready?" Nora asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, though the air inside Ember was always warm and soft, cradling them gently. Eli, who had grown accustomed to the wild feeling of flight, gave her a grin, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I was born ready," he said, clutching her hand tightly as they felt the stomach tremble beneath them. They had experienced flights before, but each journey felt new, as if Ember had a way of showing them different facets of the world. This time, the dragon seemed to be heading in a direction neither Nora nor Eli had ever seen before, toward a distant point on the horizon where the sky shifted into an ethereal blend of violet and gold. As Ember soared through the vast expanse of space, the inside of his stomach felt like a living, breathing universe unto itself. The golden light became richer, swirling in waves like the surface of a sea, and the air shifted in temperature, ebbing and flowing as Ember's internal energy pulsed. Nora and Eli could feel the vibrations in the walls more intensely now, and every movement of the dragon reverberated through their bodies like a gentle earthquake. It was as though their hearts were in sync with Ember's, the three of them moving together as one entity. "What do you think he's showing us?" Eli asked, his voice filled with wonder as he gazed at the swirling lights outside the belly of the dragon. Nora rested her head against the soft, warm wall, feeling the gentle rock of Ember's flight. "I think he's showing us everything. The places no one else gets to see. The hidden corners of the universe." Just then, the world outside changed. Suddenly, the golden sky turned dark, dotted with the glittering dust of a nearby comet field. Tiny stars whizzed past, leaving trails of silver light as Ember's body shifted again, his powerful wings catching the wind as he swooped down into the thick of the field. The light inside the stomach dimmed momentarily, and Nora and Eli could feel the shift in gravity as Ember adjusted his flight. Through the translucent walls, they saw comets streaking across the sky, their fiery tails lighting up the vastness of space. The air inside the stomach buzzed with energy, and the liquid in the streams flickered with new colors, turning into a deep, radiant purple. "It's like being inside a living comet," Nora breathed, staring in awe at the lights that danced around them. The dragon's stomach was filled with a new energy now. Ember seemed to be feeding on the cosmic forces surrounding him. Occasionally, he would inhale deeply, drawing in the stardust that floated nearby. The walls of his belly expanded slightly each time, accommodating the influx of energy. Each time Ember consumed the comet fragments, the liquid inside the stomach grew richer, like liquid stars. Nora and Eli would dip their fingers into the shimmering pools, and the liquid would respond to their touch, swirling around their hands as if alive. It tasted sweet, like nectar from the most exquisite flowers, but also had an edge of fire to it, just like Ember's breath. "What happens to us when he eats all of this?" Eli asked, feeling the warmth spreading through his veins. Nora smiled, her eyes glowing with the light around them. "I think we become part of it. Part of the energy he consumes. This journey is changing us." They could feel the effects of Ember's feeding. Their senses were heightened, their bodies lighter, and the connection they shared with the dragon deepened. The air itself seemed to hum with possibility, the walls of Ember's stomach vibrating in perfect harmony with their emotions. It felt like they were part of something larger than themselves, a great cosmic current flowing through their veins. As the comet field faded, Ember continued his journey, now heading toward a distant planet that seemed to shimmer with an unearthly glow. The ground below looked like a living ocean, waves of green and blue, pulsing with the rhythm of the land itself. It was a place of perfect serenity, untouched by time or human hands. As they descended, Nora and Eli felt the familiar tremble of Ember's landing. The stomach walls shook as if the dragon was bracing for impact, and a low rumble filled the air. They held onto each other as the ground outside shifted, Ember's feet touching down softly on the lush, bioluminescent terrain. The belly of Ember gave one last shake before settling into stillness. The air grew heavier again, filled with the scent of fresh, sweet earth and the soft hum of the alien world outside. Nora and Eli stood up, feeling the sensation of gravity settle back into their limbs. "We're here," Eli said, his voice filled with awe. "This place it's unreal." Nora nodded. "It feels like a dream. And yet, we're standing here, inside a dragon's belly, on a planet no one has ever seen." They marveled at the glowing trees that surrounded them. Their leaves shimmered with silvery hues, and the trunks were translucent, revealing the glowing veins running through them. The ground beneath their feet felt spongy, almost like walking on a soft, living carpet. Every step they took left a trail of light, as though their very presence was being recorded in the soil. As they explored this new world, they realized that Ember had brought them to a place where time didn't seem to exist. There were no clocks, no measurement of hours or minutes, only the pure existence of being, of flying, and of living inside the heart of a dragon. On the 5th day, as they sat beneath a crystal tree, Eli turned to Nora. "I've never felt more free in my life." Nora smiled, her hand resting on her chest, feeling the steady pulse of Ember's heartbeat beneath her. "Neither have I. And it's all because of him." Eli looked out across the shimmering landscape, the glow of the bioluminescent trees casting long shadows in the twilight. "We're living in a dream, Nora. But I think it's the dream we were meant to live." They didn't know how long they would stay on this strange and wondrous planet, but for now, they were content. In the belly of Ember, on a world that felt like a part of the stars, they had everything they could ever need: each other, their dragon, and a universe full of possibilities. As the days and seasons passed inside Ember's stomach, Nora and Eli realized that their lives had become more than just a sanctuary. They had become an integral part of the dragon's existence. The connection between them and Ember grew deeper, almost as if they shared one consciousness, one heartbeat. In the early days, they marveled at the changes within Ember's body. Every pulse of his heart sent gentle waves through the golden walls, and every breath he took was felt in the air around them. Over time, they discovered that they could communicate with him, not through words, but through their feelings and thoughts. A sense of calm would wash over them when Ember was content, and when he was troubled, a knot would form in the pit of their stomachs. It was one afternoon, as they were lounging in the warmth of Ember's soft stomach, that Nora realized just how attuned they had become. She was humming a lullaby, a song her mother had once sung to her when she was a child, and as she did, Ember's body responded. The golden walls shifted gently in time with her melody, and the warm liquid in the streams grew richer, its taste becoming more fragrant. Eli, noticing the change, smiled. "I think he likes it." Nora paused, her fingers trailing along the warm wall. "I think he does. It's like he understands us, not with words, but with feelings." As they continued their quiet life inside Ember, they found that their bond with him had transformed into something almost spiritual. He wasn't just their protector or their home. He had become a part of them, and they of him. They could feel his emotions, his thoughts, and sometimes, when the connection was especially strong, they could even glimpse his dreams, filled with fiery landscapes and skies of endless stars. One evening, while they were sitting together in their hammock, a slight tremor ran through the walls. They knew immediately that Ember was agitated, and Nora instinctively began to hum the lullaby once more. The moment her voice filled the air, the tremor eased, and the golden glow around them softened. It was as if Ember was responding to her song, calming his own restless heart through their shared connection. "It's like we're in tune with each other," Eli murmured, his head resting against hers. Nora smiled softly, feeling the warmth of Ember's love surround them. "We are, Eli. We really are." The days continued to stretch into eternity, and Ember's wings carried them far beyond the familiar skies of their home. Together, they ventured deeper into the unknown, crossing realms of swirling colors and drifting through nebulae that sparkled like jewels. The sensation of flying was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The belly of Ember rocked gently, its movements shifting with the undulations of his wings. But it wasn't just the external adventures that filled their hearts. It was the connection they felt with each other and with Ember. It was as if they were part of something larger than themselves, a cosmic dance that spanned time and space. They were no longer just Nora, Eli, and Ember. They had become a part of a greater whole, a being that transcended the physical boundaries of existence. One day, as they sailed through the cosmic ocean, Ember's body grew unusually still. The stomach, once full of gentle hums and soft tremors, became quiet, as though the dragon was deep in thought. Nora and Eli exchanged a glance, feeling a sense of wonder mixed with curiosity. "Where are we going now?" Nora asked softly, her voice a whisper against the stillness. Eli held her hand, looking out at the swirling stars. "Wherever Ember takes us. He's our guide. He's always been our guide." It was in that moment that they realized how much trust they had placed in Ember. Not just as a protector, but as a true companion. He had taken them from their world, from the confines of loneliness, and shown them the vastness of the universe. They had learned to embrace the unknown, to explore it with a sense of wonder and awe. The golden walls of Ember's stomach began to shift again, this time more dramatically, as if he was preparing for something momentous. The gentle hum of his body became stronger, vibrating through the very air they breathed. Nora leaned her head back against the soft wall, feeling the warmth of the liquid beneath her. "Do you ever feel like this is all meant to be?" she asked. Eli smiled, his eyes sparkling with the light of distant stars. "I do. I think we were always meant to be here. All three of us. Together." And in that moment, something incredible happened. The golden glow that filled the stomach intensified, enveloping them in a warm, radiant light. The air around them shimmered with the power of their bond. It was as if the universe itself was acknowledging their connection, as if they had become a part of something greater than they had ever imagined. Ember, sensing the depth of their love and unity, seemed to radiate a feeling of contentment and joy. The walls of his stomach pulsed with a comforting warmth, and the streams of liquid glowed brighter, as if to say, "You are home." Nora, Eli, and Ember continued their travels through the cosmos, exploring the wonders of the universe. But now, more than ever, they felt at peace. The adventures became less about the destinations and more about the journey itself, about the moments they shared together. Inside Ember, they created a home that was more than just a physical space. It was a place of love, of safety, and of belonging. They grew to understand the rhythms of Ember's body, knowing when he was tired, when he was happy, and when he needed their comfort. And in return, Ember cared for them in ways they had never imagined, nourishing them, protecting them, and sharing his world with them. As the years passed, Nora and Eli found that the bond they shared with each other and with Ember had become a timeless connection. They no longer feared the outside world, for they had created their own world within Ember's belly, a world that was warm, safe, and full of love. Their days were filled with laughter, exploration, and quiet moments of contentment. They would wander through the lush landscapes of Ember's dreams, discovering new worlds within him, each more magical than the last. And when the winds of the cosmos blew strong and the stars twinkled brightly in the distance, they knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, inside Ember, forever. The dragon, who had once been their protector, had become their family. And with every beat of his heart, he cared for them, ensuring that they would always be safe, always be loved, and always be home. As the years passed, Nora and Eli found that the bond they shared with each other and with Ember had become a timeless connection. They no longer feared the outside world, for they had created their own world within Ember's belly, a world that was warm, safe, and full of love. Their days were filled with laughter, exploration, and quiet moments of contentment. They would wander through the lush landscapes of Ember's dreams, discovering new worlds within him, each more magical than the last. And when the winds of the cosmos blew strong and the stars twinkled brightly in the distance, they knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, inside Ember, forever. The dragon, who had once been their protector, had become their family. And with every beat of his heart, he cared for them, ensuring that they would always be safe, always be loved, and always be home.